But to get us on to our next topic here, South African rands, 14 of them from Skydance, Bringers of Death. I know who this is. This is a guy who typically changes his name here often.
And we
Sony
love
made
his
its
names.
Yes, Sony made its offer. Hopefully, board considers. So, we'll just call this individual Bob for now because that's generally what he calls himself anyway. Yeah, Bob's got a point here because this was a big offer that came in from Sony yesterday. $26 million on the table now. Billion. Sorry, did I say million? I meant
yes.
They're sitting there waffling around
That's
with
what they call a
Skydance.
Freudian slip because that's what
Yes, yeah, it's about what it's worth.
That's what it's worth.
Sorry, because the Sony offer is technically worth about twice what the company's worth, and it's almost twice what the offer that they're getting from Skydance is. So yeah, Sony came in, looked at the offer from Skydance, and just threw their dick on the table and said, "Here you go, $26 billion. Take it or leave it." So, what do you say out of this, Andre? Because this was a kind of a surprise yesterday. Although I told people not to count Sony out, didn't I?
Yeah, and I have to say, like, Tom is very, very often right about these things because you've been saying in streams for weeks now, don't count out Sony. And what yesterday, which annoyed me because we dropped a Star Trek video about Skydance and what will happen if they were to acquire. Didn't mention word about
that was
Sony
a good
there,
video.
but I had. Oh, well, thanks. Glad you enjoyed it. It was a fun blast from the past, writing Star Trek again.
Kind of was, yeah.
Yeah. It was like, do I really? Yeah. It's a tough balancing act between our long-time viewers have seen much of this before, but at the same time, this is vital understanding to newcomers who may not have. But anyway, so Sony Pictures have entered the fray to acquire Paramount, and that's very, very interesting, and from what I have heard, may be something that Shadi was hoping for. Could be that the reason that she has been entertaining, this is pure speculation, that she was entertaining Skydance wasn't because she really wants to sell to them, but to drive up the price for a studio that she's much more interested in selling. And if so, it worked because Sony had to work with someone else to be able to get the funding required. But would they be a better home for Paramount than Skydance? That, of course, is a question. If this
and that's been the big debate in the backroom DMs. I'll tell you that much, because here's the thing with Sony. Because, I mean, I remember saying something similar to this back when Warner Brothers was part of it. I said, are you sure Sherry's not just playing games here trying to jack the price up? And it's kind of what it feels like she did here. And I think you're right on that, Andre. But
Shari is a smart businesswoman.
Oh, yeah.
The thing to keep in mind here is that Paramount is down the drain because of the people who manage this Paramount are all a bunch of retards and incompetence, with apologies to retards everywhere. But anyway, you catch my drift, right? She is a smart businesswoman, and if she personally had ran Paramount, probably things would have been better. But she outsourced it, and she outsourced it clearly to the wrong people, or she trusted the people that were already there, and that trust was clearly misplaced because they have ran the studio into the ground. But now again, it is a smart businesswoman here who may be trying to drive the price up to find the right buyer. That could be what we're seeing here with all of this Skydance and everything.
I don't understand how someone can't recognize the fact that the people that you've got are not running things well enough. Now, part of that could come from the fact that there's no other talent out there better to replace them. But when I was running a company, the mantra is hire slowly, fire fast.
Yes.
Paramount was
how you run a business.
Paramount was artificially held up for years. That's the problem, Paul. They had so much Chinese money coming in, they didn't know what to do with it. And then all of a sudden that fountain got turned off real quick. And they turned into panic mode. And that was during the whole remerger and all these things happening at once.
But
then it was just
CBS was still a powerhouse. It's still
all they had, though. That's the problem, Paul.
Well, the other problem too is
Yeah.
that when Paramount split into Paramount and CBS, a lot of
Yes.
really competent people lost their jobs and went to other studios. So you
Okay.
don't have anyone there that knew what they were
Well,
doing
that's the source of the problem. Yeah.
to operate it. So they were basically using, as Tom said, China's money as a crutch to make up for the fact that they didn't have an infrastructure to actually manage these properties, manage their distribution as well. And when the China money went, vanished, then we actually got to see the blowback, the last domino fell, so to speak, with regards to management at Paramount.
No, the last mahjong tile.
The last mahjong tile. And then on top of that, you also have all these other smaller departments at Paramount that are doing all the right things, which is they're trying to create low budget feature films and television shows. But the higher ups at Paramount are actually putting stopgaps in those developments. I was talking to a buddy last night who 2 years ago sold a spec to Paramount and they got a green light. And then when they were going into casting, some executive at the high up said, nope, we're not doing this one right now. We're going to put a pin in it. And basically the project stopped. And if that's what they're doing at Paramount after they've made all these massive purchases over the last 5 years, they're basically just hoarding a bunch of IP, spending a bunch of money up front, and then not delivering on a production and a release. So they're not making any money off of it either. So it's completely backwards thinking with regards to studio development.
What a shame.
Yeah. So like they basically just
degree.
they just basically hit a storm of bullshit all at once. And again, part of it is their own doing. So it's not like, and that was the splitting up. And then for years they were just like living on the money that China was throwing in there. And that's why we constantly had stuff in like the Transformer movies with, little Chinese things and stuff like that here and there, where they were always doing that kind of stuff. But so they've gone way down this hole in the last couple years here, especially as we've been talking. And Andre and I I don't think we ever could have imagined they would go this low. But here they are. But so the big question.
No, that's hard to imagine. But sorry, carry on.
No, the big question on the table was, and it kind of going along with this was, we used to hate Tom Rothman, but Andre and I both have to admit that Tom Rothman was one of the best things to ever happen to Sony. But now, will Sony be one of the best things to ever happen to Paramount? That's the big question, right? Because as you brought up in your great report that we dropped yesterday, Andre, just to kind of sum that up, you pointed out, as I keep pointing out, Skydance is part of the reason that Paramount is in this fucking place. Not just themselves and their people that are involved, but the movies that Skydance has produced for them, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Because here's the thing with Skydance. They're a blessing and a curse at the same time. Because the good thing with Skydance, let's begin with the good thing. They are first and foremost a financier, not so much an active producing partner. They'll have some input here and there, obviously, but first and foremost, they're a financier. If you already have a team in place and they believe in that team, they're just going to pump in the movie that team can make the best movie they possibly can. And if the right team is in place, magic is going to happen. Some great movies have come out under Skydance. Now, the flip side of that is that if you don't have the right team in place, and Skydance still believes in that team, and again, largely stays out of their way, or has some input that's not really going to help because it's fundamentally the wrong team, they're still going to pump money into it, and now you have a very, very expensive flop on your hands. As a blessing or the curse. It's a lack of quality control. And Paramount has suffered from that, especially with, for instance, Star Trek. All of their worst Star Trek movies, the worst performing ones, Skydance was in all of them, to mention one example there.
I'm looking at Skydance's productions here, and of all of them, there's only like one or two that are any good. True Grit, and that's because of who made it.
Top Gun Maverick. That's
again, who made it? Mission Impossible films, again, connected to Tom Cruise.
Who made it?
Yeah. Otherwise, you're stuck with stuff like G.I. Joe, Star Trek Into Darkness, Terminator Genesis, Jack Reacher films, Baywatch, Geostorm, Gemini Man. That was that Will Smith movie, for those who are forgetting what the hell that was. Snake Eyes. Need I go on anymore? I mean, it
I
just
don't
keeps
know.
going.
Citadel-
Transformers Rise of the
Citadel was-
Beast.
Citadel was brilliant.
Which one?
No, I'm just kidding. Citadel.
I didn't hear what Citadel.
It's a
Did they
streaming-
even produce that?
It's a streaming show. Skydance produced it.
Yeah,
They made it, okay.
they also fund a bunch of
horrific.
streaming shows all over the place for Apple and for Peacock and
The Family
everything. It's not
Plan.
just
That's the one I
movies.
just saw. That's actually pretty good.
That was good.
The
Again,
Tomorrow
the
War is
team.
another one that wasn't too bad. But again, they're
Yeah.
straight to streaming movies, so we don't know how they would have done in the box office.
But the point is that that's the thing
Yeah.
with them, that they will just support the infrastructure that's already there, and that's the problem when it comes to Star Trek. Because what we learned, or at least what we were told by a source, that in the hypothetical event that they were to acquire all of Paramount, then when it comes to Star Trek, they're going to be like, hey, we know these people. We have a prior relationship with these people. We like what these people are doing. So we're just going to give our friend J.J. Abrams a ton of money to make more Star Trek movies, and we're going to support our other friend, who we are slightly less friendly with, but we're still good business partners, Alex Kurtzman, so he can continue what he's doing with Star Trek. So that's just going to be the continued destruction of Star Trek. My problem with Sony is that I think it's going to be much of the same thing. Because here's the thing: what you need, what any company needs, is good brand managers, and that is what, with a few exceptions, Paramount doesn't have. And where they don't have that, they don't have anyone who's able to spot that, oh shit, here we actually have a really, really bad brand manager. Because, for instance, you look at Star Trek, you look at Alex Kurtzman, you see, wow, he has produced so many series. He must be amazing. He's rivaling Rick Berman with all the stuff that he's produced. None of it is connecting, but they don't see that. They just see the output. They see how much he has produced and equate that with quality and success, even though it absolutely isn't if you look here further down in the numbers. But my worry is that if Sony were to take over, Tom Rothman, he's not going to know anything like this. The good thing about him is that he has learned what he doesn't know and when to back off. Now, is there someone else in Sony who knows what they're doing with Star Trek? That's not the way to do this. Is there someone in Sony who knows that? Is there someone there who can go in and be a better brand manager? That I don't know, but I don't have any reason to think so. And that's my worry. I think that where Star Trek is concerned, if Skydance takes over or Sony takes over, fans are in the same place because it's going to be the same team continuing what they're doing. That's my big worry. Because you need someone that understands where they have stepped wrong. And unfortunately, I don't see too many in Hollywood right now, certainly not who are in a position to do anything about it, recognizing that. Yes, Script Doctor recognizes it. And there are many, many others who do, but they're not in a position where they actually can do something about it. The people who are in a position who can do something about it, I don't know that they see it.
Well, and Tom Rothman, here's the thing, and we don't know if he's the one who really wanted this to go through, if it was people above him. He is not an IP person. And here's the reason why Sony is in better shape than it was, say, 5 years ago, is because Tom Rothman has taken a lot of chances on smaller, medium-sized pictures, the kind that Paul and the rest of us bring up all the time, right? Like, he was responsible for Baby Driver, for instance. That was a huge hit for him. That made a lot of money. It made a lot of money for them because it didn't cost jack squat to make. And he champions those kind of movies. He's not a fan of comic book movies. He's not a fan of sequels and IPs. So that gives me a little bit of pause. But I also wonder if they're not more interested in the catalog, which means good things for home video. And maybe Sony just wants to adopt Paramount Plus, because as Script and I were talking about last night when this first dropped, Paramount Plus, surprisingly, is one of the few streaming services that's in better shape. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Script. Yeah, they don't spend out as much money as the rest of the guys do.
They don't, and even in the situation where we see here, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles selling them to itself, it's still been projected by multiple accountants. There were articles about this last year that they would be profitable at the earliest 2025, at the latest 2027.
But you know what's been driving that profit? It's been since they bought Pluto.
Yeah, which is also an ad-supported
Mhm.
system as well, and then Paramount Plus is also leaning more into ads as well. The only thing that's actually been quite terrible across the entire streaming market is a bunch of basic plans that normal streamers had, which would be your bare minimums, are all being tossed, and now you've got your premium and then your premium plus tiers, which are coming into it. So they're taking away a market value.
Except Netflix, their ad-supported plan is 40% cheaper and offers better feature than the basic plan it's replacing.
Well,
so they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and the other thing that Paramount Plus has going for it is a lot like Peacock, is they're amortizing a lot of their CBS and their cable stuff through Paramount Plus, right? So, and they got the Taylor Sheridan film shows. So those are a big deal for them too.
I think one of the weirdest things for me to watch is how poorly managed this company is from an executive management standpoint. When you have such gems as things that you've talked about at length, Tom, like and you and Script have done it, at length. The Tyler Sheridan stuff. I mean, the sports stuff is incredibly valuable and profitable. I mean, and they are like, there's all kinds of other shows that have like cult addictions, like the SEAL Team 6 show. I mean, that fan base is just loyal as, they've stuck through everything, broadcast and, when it's CBS All Access.
Well, said it, that Star Trek is like the least of their least of their IPs, actually, when you think about it, compared to SpongeBob, TMNT, South Park, just alone. I mean, but anyway, you were about to say something else.
Well, I was just going to say, and when you look either at the historical catalog, your Star Treks that have been underdeveloped, underutilized, and non-monetized, and I'm going to say non-monetized, they're just buckets of holes of cash. And then you look at the things that you guys have just talked about, you and Script were just mentioning and stuff like that. When you look at this, it's shocking to me, this valuation is coming in this low. Certainly is warranted, because if you look at the balance sheet and the stock performance, I mean, yeah, you get from a market standpoint, 26 billion, they should take it and run. But it is shocking to me, and it makes me wonder and think, how much are these other IPs that have been overvalued that companies are sitting on, like your Disneys and your Marvel? I mean, is Lucasfilm still worth billions of dollars? I'm going to say au contraire to that crap.
Well, and the problem with Lucasfilm is it was overvalued to begin with, and Andre's done a great job of covering that, to since the beginning. But speaking of Disney, we have another guest joining us. When it rains, it pours on a Friday. Mr. Jonas J Campbell, somebody we haven't seen in a while. How you doing?
Hello, it's so good to be back on this day where we talk about another merger. My goodness, that's a lot of money.
So yeah, well, the big question on the table right now is Sony a good merger for Paramount? And we haven't really, or a good fit for Paramount. We haven't really got to the main question yet, or the main answer, I should say. We've been just kind of getting there, and to kind of bring you up to speed. But I mean, I want to hear what everybody else thinks about this. I mean, Tom Rothman is a concern as far as IPs go. But at the same time, I think Sony's a much better home than Skydance would be. And I think that they are interested in maybe getting into the streaming business, and Paramount Plus having that base already is a good place to start from. Because they did try it early on and they didn't like it, outside of the Crunchyroll and all that business, but that gets us on the other part. They have lost a lot of fans with anime, right? So that's a big problem. Something we kind of discussed last night.
Yellowflash can speak to that.
Yeah, Sony has with their Crunchyroll business and all that stuff.
I don't think they've lost that. Sony pretty much now owns Western
well, yeah, but
anime.
they're not happy. People aren't happy about it, was my point.
But they're still supporting it, though. I mean, they own Crunchyroll. That's the #1 spot to watch anime in the West now. If you're not already flying a pirate flag. If you're not flying a pirate flag, I mean, that's all the shit's on Crunchyroll. They have a monopoly on it.
Man isn't on it.
Well, and that's my point, is people are pissed that they have a monopoly and how they treat some of the stuff. But okay, so there's a slight positive or negative on that part.
I mean,
But,
I don't
the other-
like Crunchyroll.
That's
don't
what I
have
mean.
Crunchyroll,
That's my
but-
point.
No, I don't
mean,
either.
Most people, that's where they go. I mean, I try
that
to
was
go
what I was
everywhere.
thinking.
I try to go everywhere I can, but Crunchyroll, to watch this shit.
But then
I
Flash
don't.
at the
I
end of the
don't. I don't like giving them money.
Oh, so Flash at the end of the day, though, it's where people got to go. Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not, terminally online like I am,
Yeah.
I mean,
If you're not on the high seas, then I
Yeah.
think legally that's
Well,
where you have to go.
and
If
then
you
I
want
guess-
to be parting with your money the good legal way that that everyone approves of in the corporate world, then that's where you got to be.
Well, and then the other thing is that something that Script and I and the rest of the gang talked about last night, and that is if Sony buys Paramount, that's another major that's going off the table. Now, I made a little bit of an argument: is Paramount even still considered a major? Considering, but that is a good point to be made. That Paramount is one of the last OG studios left standing. When Fox was bought out by Disney, that was a big deal because that was one of the big OGs, and now it's gone. It's pretty much soaked up into Disney. So this is kind of what would be happening here. Do you guys think they'll keep it separate somehow?
Here's my question on that. Hasn't Lionsgate beat Paramount at the box office
Yes.
several of the last few years?
Well,
It
not
has,
only that,
but it's kind
Lionsgate
of-
was beating Sony for a while too. Sorry.
It has, but it's also kind of irrelevant when you take a look at the fact that Paramount has a legacy of over 100 years as a standing company.
Oh, yeah.
Lionsgate having a peak just in the last 10 is irrelevant over the entire history of Paramount, and that's essentially what's being sold.
This will also on the Disney side. This will create another interesting situation because then Paramount would also have a share of Fortnite, which I know it's arguable on this panel whether or not that's significant or not. I would say it's significant.
It is, but the question being is like, will the courts allow this transaction to go? Because they have already expressed regret over the Fox and Disney merger. They've already seen how it has kind of hurt things around the industry. So, again, shrinking the bigger studios is not good because that gets closer to consolidation and monopoly, not just on the fact that you have these small, big studios able to make $100 million produced features or $200 million produced features, but also they're now able to be far more selective over who gets to take advantage of their distribution network. So which means that all the independents that would normally sell to the studios have to then be self-distributed. And even though they do have some advantages with social media and YouTube platforms, it's still nowhere near as lucrative as getting a distribution deal from one of the major studios.
So then, do you think that Paramount would be able to survive under Skydance more as Paramount under Skydance than they would under Sony, TriStar, Columbia?
Well, first of all, you're talking about whether or not there will actually be an approval of that purchase. We don't know yet. We can't know. I mean, speculating on that survival is unknown until the courts actually review it and say, yes, this can go through. Then you can start speculating. Until then,
they'll approve it. A little juice money goes a long way.
Yeah. Well,
they're throwing some bribes in there, most likely. But the question being, is like, how much are they going to bribe in order to pull that off?
And I said last night, I know what you're saying, Script.
I mean, how much did Disney pay? They got it done.
I was just going to say, and I agree with you, but the problem is there was a precedent set, and as much as they may want to regret it, Sony's going to make as much argument as they can that not allowing them to do this puts Disney at an unfair advantage. And Sony is the only studio right now that, if you don't count all their little indie studios, they're the only ones that don't have more than one major studio underneath them, since TriStar and Columbia are technically the same studio. See, and that was the point I made last night, because you have Warner Brothers, who has New Line and stuff like that, and you have Disney, who now has Fox, and you have, Universal is the only one who they have Blumhouse, but that isn't even technically a major. So they're the only two that really don't have a major underneath them besides their own original title. That being said, I don't know if that argument's going to fly. You got a point. We'll have to wait and see, but I guess the question on the table for everybody is, where would you rather see them, I guess, end up at the end of the day? Skydance or Sony? What do you think is the better option here? Especially if you've seen the video that Andre dropped yesterday. I guess that's a good place to start.
I'd rather have Elon buy Paramount Pictures.
Who wouldn't?
It's so safer, easier transaction.
Elon Musk, he don't give a shit about this.
Honestly, if we had the money, I'd
agree.
tell Mikey to go get a fucking loan right now and get us this bitch.
This is the
I don't-
last
Oh my
thing,
God.
This is the last thing I would want to spend money on at all. Hollywood like studios, it's a fucking dying brand.
I think
Well-
with this, the Hollywood studio is not as important as the CBS assets at this point. Linear TV will have some kind of surviving presence here. Culture would be saying that if he was here. He's said that he thinks that linear being cable and broadcast is probably going to survive at around the level that it is right now. And I think there's something to that.
It's got
giving-
one generation left of it for sure, because the internet is going to dominate, and that will be the means of communicating over the air broadcasts in the future.
Right. I mean, if we're talking from a technological standpoint, it's pretty much the same thing as internet TV. It's just the method that people are, or the method of which you access it. It's all bits and bytes when it comes down to it. Your coax cable is your data connection anyway. So, but that 50% of the market that it represents right now, whether or not that is labeled as an internet company or not, broadcast channels or cable channels or fast channels with these micro IPs, that's something that Sony right now doesn't have full access to because they don't have CBS. CBS is delivering a lot of content that is in that older style. I think they're doing better in linear than they obviously are on streaming, because the headline just hit that Knuckles is the biggest premiere ever for Paramount, and while we usually push back on that part place when Disney says it,
I guess
think
he's
it's
barely
true.
in it too. Is that true?
That is true. I mean, it's a lot cheaper
What is
to
it
put.
fucking about then if he's not in it?
Well,
It's
I'll
called
say this:
Knuckles.
if you found Wade Whipple in the Sonic movies to be funny, then the Knuckles series is for you. I found it to be very funny. There's an episode that takes place at a Sabbath dinner, and it's amazing and has a huge fight in it, a physical fight in it. It's hilarious. There's a rock opera episode. It's also not woke, so I did watch it with at least some of my kids. I liked it, but I understand it's not for everybody. So
Remind me,
I'll
who
check
is
it out.
Wade Whittle again?
Wade Whipple is not the sheriff, but the sheriff deputy. The one, he's also in Iron Man 3.
Okay.
So if you
Right.
find him funny, you will find the show funny. If he
I
gets
was
on your
hoping
nerves,
it would be like the personal assistance of Robotnik, because that guy was awesome and I love the chemistry between the two.
yeah,
But
it
of
gives
course,
me
I
hope.
Oh,
don't
man,
think
that
they're
the-
too
that guy
family
was-
friendly.
That guy was hilarious. He ran that coffee shop
Yes,
while he was
exactly.
waiting for Jim Carrey to retire.
I'd see a spin-off series around that guy any day.
Yeah,
I
He was awesome.
I'm real curious since we're talking Sonic real quick. Like I'm real curious to see if that movie does damage to Mufasa, because they're coming out the same day.
oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
and
and Mufasa had the comments switched off. That's how good
Yeah.
that trailer is doing.
Sonic 3,
Sonic-
wouldn't it be funny if Sonic 3 beats Mufasa?
It's going to.
well,
I'm telling you right here now, it's going to.
You're mooted.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And the other thing I want to point out is all of these Star Trek series just got beat out by a minor entry into the Sonic IP. All of that Discovery and Strange New World
Discovery
and
that
all of
hasn't
that.
trended even once, and it's in its final season. Another point I made in our video, Star Trek video from yesterday.
I
Do check it
think
out.
someone's going to write a business book on how abysmal the big TV networks, CBS, ABC, Fox, NBC, has managed this digital conversion. It has been they've been a laughing stock on how they have demonstrated a complete inability to show any kind of synergy between their over-the-air service, which was very profitable, and what's happened with digital. I mean, their complete synergy tactic is to put clips of Colbert on YouTube. That is CBS's entire digital strategy.
I think the mistake was made because they thought, hear me out. Back when DVD first came out, they thought DVD was just going to be a niche Laserdisc kind of thing for a while. And that's why they still banked on video for the longest time. They didn't realize it was going to take off as fast as it did. I think they made the opposite mistake here. They thought that streaming is going to be the future. We need to get in on it now. And they even did it to themselves on purpose, tried to kill off cable, television, and theatrical all at the same time, in thinking that the streaming was this end all be all of the future and they were going to get ahead of the game. They did not realize what
Right.
you guys have been just saying for the last 10 minutes or so, that network television is not going to go anywhere for a while. In fact, what we're slowly learning, and this is why I think Peacock and Paramount Plus, going back to what we were just saying before, are actually kind of not winning, but doing better in the game than we thought they were at the tail end of the streaming war, because they're actually embracing the fact that they're NBC and CBS. And people are missing that. They're talking about that still. We talk about that all the time, how we miss linear television the way it used to be. And that's what people are gravitating towards. They're also getting sick and tired of having to go through and try and find stuff for streaming. Sometimes they just want to turn something on and they don't want to have to think.
The networks need to crank up new shows on their service. We need to go back to a whole slate of interesting shows on the networks, and they can feed those into profitable streaming services and drop their own streaming services.
I'll agree with that 100%.
They need to go back to their core competency, because there is no other system that is able to crank out 24 shows a year of any series.
And that's the other parts that they've killed, right?
They've killed
They killed what used to be the most profitable thing in their industry. And this is what I was saying too about, I swear there's got to be a report in this somewhere, Andre, so keep me on top of this. But in the 90s, television and movies were the most profitable they had ever been. They figured out the formula on how to do this. You had all these cable companies making bank because we had hundreds of cable channels.
Deadline Hollywood did a story on just that.
Yeah, and same thing with networks, right? Like they were making so much money. And why is this? Because of the revenue that was being brought in from commercials. And then same thing over on the studio side of things. They were making so much money on the home video side of things and the network side of things. And all of them worked and lived in harmony. Like all of a sudden they decided we're going to kill all of this shit with a nuke and just go to one thing and one thing only.
Cable started it, and the network televisions found that they could make more money in a shorter time frame with reality shows. That was their crack cocaine.
Oh man.
And that's really
knows a thing or two about that. Yeah.
That's what started killing the networks, is that they got greedy, and no one cares about watching reruns of Treasure whatever or The Island.
But what are they doing now? They're watching reruns of Treasure whatever, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the older stuff is killing.
Is it
right
okay?
now.
So I don't watch Big Brother or any of those things like that.
Women do.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's true.
Yeah.
Women-
I
This
can
is
say
how
that
popular-
MILF Manor is a
Women-
fantastic show.
Women love these shows, man. It's all my
Well, and
life
this is
watches
another thing
this
about
shit.
classic television. I'll tell you right now, it is so popular now that I can't even believe this. They're supposedly remastering all of Friends in 4K. Who the fuck needs Friends in 4K?
A
High
lot
def
of
is
very
enough.
sad millennials, actually.
Oh my.
That means they think there's money in that.
Let's all point out that they did Frasier on Paramount, and they did a 10-episode micro series instead of 26 episodes of fully formulated sitcom.
And that should have been on NBC, Jonas. That should have been a
Yes.
full-fledged show. What the hell are they doing?
Well,
Why
that should have been
did-
on CBS, and the thing is, it did
Or
so well,
CBS,
they got
whatever, yeah.
They have a second season, but yeah, the thing is, they were still doing it under the old model where they wrote and shot everything before they even started airing it, as opposed to what you should be doing, especially on a 22 model, which is you shoot your pilot, you test it, then you get your first 11 for your full 12, and then you test those week by week, and if everything goes well, you get your back 9, and then you just keep going from there to there. That's the model that is what's most stable.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.